Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. Two in 2 days, guys. We're absolutely treating you. But we've got a bit of a more familiar cast on today. Ryan, you joined me yesterday. Still keeping well?
Yeah, man, I'm suffering from burnout from all these podcasts. Hey, Hibs will need to settle down for a bit for the foreseeable.
Hey, and then Liam, how are you getting on?
I doing well, thank you, mate. Doing all hunky dory.
Hey, and G, we've got a quite exciting trip coming up to Birmingham / Aston Villa
We
away
do.
this week. Are we excited for it?
Buzzing, mate. Finished my working week today, so I'm buzzing. Be a couple of sleepless nights, I think. But bring it on. Greg,
And then,
can I just ask Greg? He finished his working week today. What's he doing tomorrow? Is tomorrow self-care day ahead of your couple of days away?
Yeah. So tomorrow will be haircut and skincare day just before the silliness kicks off. So yeah, tweeze my eyebrows and that, pluck them. So got to be done, mate.
Modern men, eh? Modern men.
Jeez, G, as much as I love you, the less I hear about skincare day, the better. But mentioning Aston
grow
Villa,
up, Harry.
You grew up.
And we'll talk a bit about our expectations for that game towards the end of the episode. But long story short, they battered us. They're a very good team. They've got a world-class manager who does very well in Europe, and it showed massively. So there's not really any point in us kind of slating anybody involved for that. However, before we get onto the topic that's on everybody's minds at the moment, we're going to quickly look back on the game on Saturday against Livingston. 3-2 at home. Again, a defeat by David Martindale at Easter Road. It's frustrating. It keeps happening. Ryan, we'll come to you first. Why were we so bad? Is there anything you can pinpoint it on in particular?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of factors as to why we were quite poor. The start of the league form has been pretty poor. The mood in the dressing room's probably not great going into that game, having come off the back of a heavy defeat, which some of us probably expected, but it's still an emotional thing. It gets to you a little bit when you take a heavy defeat and then getting beat by Motherwell and St Mirren kind of all rolls into that. So it's not been a great start to the season. And then I suppose there was probably a bit of doubt and a bit of a cloud over the manager's future anyway at that point. I think the players aren't daft. They hear the grumbles and they hear the moans, so they were probably well aware of that. And then the last factor is obviously the starting 11. It just was all over the place. It's like when you pick a horse for the Grand National, you just close your eyes and pick a random spot. It's almost as if that's how he's picked his team. So it was very, very disappointing.
And Greg, as I touched on, we got beat quite handily by Aston Villa, and they scored quite a few similar goals. And Livingston decided to just pick up the copy for the first goal and do the exact same to us again. How frustrating is it? Just we've been talking about it for years now, it feels like, but defending crosses and Hibs just don't seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah, but I don't think it's helped by a couple of factors. I think it's not helped with the lack of protection down the right. Our right, it seems like a lot of goals come from that. And also he's playing a centre half out of position again. He done the same last January, at Tynecastle, and he's done it again. And he's played three defenders in a back four. He's got a left midfielder at left back, so he's not playing players in the right position, which doesn't help. And ultimately, Harbottle didn't really give us a lot going forward either because he's a centre half. So, albeit though, when the ball does come in, we're not aggressive enough in attacking it, and that's another one that seems to be a recurring theme. When a ball comes in our box, you're not aggressive enough to go and attack the ball. There's maybe a lack of desire there. Exactly the same for Livingston's second goal.
And Liam, yourself, you were at the game at the weekend. I know the other guys were as well. But obviously, after the third goals, and especially, it just seemed like it went full blown toxic in the stands. It was just dreadful. I feel bad because you don't ever want anybody to go out in an atmosphere that bad. But by the end of the game, it kind of felt inevitable, didn't it?
I think it was toxic probably before the third goal went in. If I'm being completely honest, I think things had turned on him. The boos at half time were probably some of the loudest that I can remember in recent memory from a home support. And then
if I'm being honest, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. The third goal was ultimately the sort of final nail in the coffin, if you like. But look, it hasn't got to that place overnight. I think there's been a probably a lack of patience really from the very beginning with him. If I'm being honest, I don't think he's someone who really ever endeared himself to the fans, and I think media like to focus on maybe one game or the start of a season and having lost the first 3 fixtures of the league season. But I think anyone who's a Hibs supporter knows that actually the patience had started to dwindle long before the beginning of this domestic campaign.
Aye, and just one more thing on the Livingston game. Obviously, for the most part, especially in the first half, we just struggled to look like we made chances. We obviously scored 2 goals in the game. First goal moment, in my opinion, of individual brilliance from Boyle. And then the second goal, just kind of a scramble after a set piece. Is there any positives? And I know it sounds daft, you got beat at home to Livingston. Was there any positives you guys can take from the game for whoever takes over next can kind of build from?
You're probably having to really look hard to find them, if I'm being honest. Martin Boyle, other than the game against the Andorran team at home, hasn't really looked like Martin Boyle yet since he's come back. I think a lot of that's due to the fact he's had a very serious long-term injury at the stage in his career that he's at, so it's all understandable. But just the way he got the other side of the Livy defender and got a goal really from nothing, I thought was promising in some respects, because that's maybe a wee bit of a snippet of a sign that he could be close to that space. I actually thought one of the other positives was Ewan's not here, so I can say this. I thought Alan Del Ferrier was brilliant. For maybe brilliant's maybe a bit strong. I thought he was good. I thought he was good, maybe version of very good in stages of the game. Playing a wee bit further forward. I was impressed with him and Newell. I was less impressed with the other member of the midfield on Saturday. But I thought Del Ferrier had a good game. But again, you are really looking very hard to find probably, 1.5 positive performances out of 11 players.
But speaking of which, we're now at the impasse. As we discussed on our live episode, do catch it if you want to hear mine and Ryan's instant reactions alongside a few fellow Hibbies. Lee Johnson was relieved of his duties, and we don't want to sit here and bash Lee Johnson. I think we've said several times on the pod we kind of made our opinions on him being the manager of the club clear, and we don't wish him any ill will for the future. However, we are happy that we've got the opportunity to go in a different direction now with a new manager hopefully coming in the door. But speaking of which, personally, I thought we were probably going to wait till the Aberdeen game to sack him, so I was actually quite surprised. Ryan, did you think the timing made sense?
I think when the East Stand turned the way they did and the stadium became toxic, I think it was completely untenable then. Had we not kind of given that reaction, it might have been a case of giving them Aston Villa, potentially Aberdeen. But I think once the fans turned in the way that they did, then there was no going back from that. There had to be a decision made, and very quickly. Ultimately, they came to the right decision. So, yeah, I mean, as you say, we're just going a different direction now. Hope for better things for the club. We've all been waiting long enough now, so look forward to what's next.
Wasn't just East Stand as well, Harry, though. It was three stands. Like, it was three stands in unison. And I think, people are quite, I think people were quite quick to point out that it was the East Stand, but to be honest, if the West Stand are probably even more of a signal of you've lost it, because the West Stand don't really sing for anything. So, no offence to the West Stand dwellers.
Yeah. Just meant, sorry, Greg.
So there's a couple of moments where the West Stand sort of erupted and waves of abuse at him. He's not helped himself by cupping his ears when we equalise, and then they go up there and then score straight away. It just makes yourself look silly. But I also thought his attitude, he wasn't out in the touchline. He was sitting down. Compare that to Martindale, and he was kicking every ball, and I think that says a lot about a manager's body language. I think he knew he was in trouble. He knew he was in trouble, and the start of the game, another half of football with no shots on target. Fans are. It's now become apparent that the fans are really looking at that sort of stuff. So, I I think the full ground was against them by the time it got 3-1, and that was it. You just knew it was finished. No match report came out, so you knew sort of what was coming, really.
Right. Well, if he's one positive, actually, I forgot to mention. I know it sounds weird, but it was my wee sister's first Hibs game, and she absolutely loved it. She's a huge Martin Boyle fan, so when he slammed it in the back of the net, apparently she was going daft. And then the booing at halftime, apparently she couldn't get enough of it. Like, she just loves pantomime stuff. So apparently she was going rage with the booing. So I was like, that's making up for me not being there. So well done in that sense. At least you made someone happy. At least one wee Hibby's happy after the weekend.
Harry, I heard she got a photo with her favourite down the slope member.
Oh, well, I heard from Greg that you ruined a lovely family photo, so we'll leave that there.
Greg's in it too, by the way. So,
yeah.
But me and Liam were sort of to the side, no trying to be front and centre acting the main character, mate. So.
Do you know what it was? Harry's sister says, "Well, we all get a photo and send it to Harry," and you two got stage fright.
Aye. Well,
we just didn't want to ruin it.
We'll discuss our editorial direction in terms of photography later on, guys. But speaking of the club, it wasn't just Lee Johnson that departed. It was also McAllister as well as Adam Owen, I believe, the coach. Would you have liked to see any of them hang around? I know there was talks of like Adam Owen was actually the guy that prepped the team for the Luzerne game, so there might have actually been the one game this season we've actually looked pretty good in was the one that he supposedly took the reins because he's got quite a extensive European knowledge. Would you have liked to see either of them hang around, or do you think that was kind of an entourage that probably had to go together?
I remember being quite impressed with Adam Owen when he first hired him, and his CV I thought really stood up well for someone who was coming in to do sort of an assistant manager, first team coach role. It's really difficult to make a judgment call on them or McAllister because you just don't know what's the ins and outs are. I've seen some people speculating, David Gray shouldn't hang around because he's a right back and we've not been defending very well of late. But I don't think anyone knows for sure whether or not David Gray takes the defenders for training. I certainly don't. We've not had that level of insight from the club. We have asked for it on a couple of occasions. We've asked to speak to first team coaches to understand a little bit more about what the club were doing in pre-season, for example. But I think it's really hard to make a judgment call on McAllister and Owen's role because I have no insight really into what part of the job they were designated. Jamie McAllister's done a wee bit of media. If I'm honest, I would have preferred that he'd done all of the media during Lee Johnson's tenure because I think when he spoke, he was fine. But yeah, no, I don't have really a fixed opinion either way. I do think it's just typical. It's the norm when a manager gets sacked. If it's the entourage that he brought with him, they normally go with him. That's just how it works.
Aye. And then just to follow on from that, I won't give my opinion on it, but I think it's a question that does need to be asked. There's been a few coaches that have been in and around there, including David Gray. Is there anybody that you think should leave as well? Is there anybody that you think's been here too long and maybe stagnating? Again, that's not my opinion. It's just a question I've seen floated around Twitter quite often. Is there anybody else you'd want to see go and as part of this restart?
Unless you're on the inside, you really don't know who's doing what and how well it's been done. It's almost impossible to say what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. So I really can't pass any judgment on that. To be honest with you, I do think it's still important and it adds a little bit of value that you have somebody there that absolutely gets what it means. David Gray and Darren McGregor are those two people at the minute. For me, you've got a director of football who's never dipped his toe in Scottish football before, so it's important to have those kind of people to bounce off from time to time. Same with Ben Kensell, he was always down south, so I think you do need that little bit of value in there.
And then just one last Lee Johnson one before we kind of look at the future of the club at the moment. I was actually wanting to do a special episode during the international break of Johnsonisms, just looking at some of the quotes Lee Johnson would have and comparing it to David Brent and seeing who was who. Unfortunately, he's bit the bullet before we've had the chance to do that. So before we move on from Lee Johnson, but it would be disrespectful not to give our favourite Lee Johnson quote during his time at the club. I'll kick off with, I wish our players would go in the Celtic locker room and ask what they're having for their breakfast. Immediately after we got beat 6-1, the brass neck to do that and try and have a laugh after you've lost by 5 goals. In fairness to the boy, that is some set of cojones he had on him that day. So fair play, Lee Johnson, for that one.
Locker room, who's having him first?
It's not a locker room for a kick-off. This is in America. It's a changing room, or I'd even accept changes.
Okay.
But certainly not locker room. That's just nonsense. Going into the Celtic locker room.
Well, if we get Ted Lasso in, I'll be in my element. But anyway, Greg, what's your favourite Lee Johnson quote since he was at the club?
The one for a week about the supper, needing to be hungry, eat your supper. Just not nonsense, really. When we've gone through a game at Motherwell, just pretty much tick box exercise, played the game, and then he's going on about supper and eating. And he's obsessed with eating, whether that's breakfast or whatever. But there's so many you could pick out that just make you angry, to be honest.
Ryan, coming to you next. Any Lee Johnson quotes in particular?
Sharks don't care about Mondays. They just go about biting stuff and being aggressive. Come on, man. Come on.
He wasn't at Hibs when he said that, was he?
No, I think it was Bristol City. Sunderland.
Okay, if it was a Hibs one, it'd be Will Fish. If you were being chased by a lion, you would go 100%. Like, equally as stupid. Like, what's the animal kingdom got to do with football, man?
See the other one that really annoyed me is the percentiles one, where the percentiles said it should have been a win, but it wasn't. It's just like, doesn't matter what the percentages in the stats say. It's
another word that he said that annoyed me. Instead of maximum, he said maximal.
Oh God!
Maximal effort. I mean, come on, man.
My last gripe I'm going to get out with Lee Johnson, still looking back at the St Johnstone game where we ended up losing the night game, and everybody and their dog was begging for Kyle McGuinness to go off, and he said that his little energy machine said that Kyle McGuinness was fine to continue, so that's why he didn't sub him off, and then we ended up he got sent off and we got beat. So I've still got a gripe. Liam, any final fond memories of Lee Johnson before we move on?
I was going to sneak two in. One's really quick. When the St Mirren fan said, "Johnson, mate, your team shite," and he said, "You're not wrong, pal," was just fucking like, cringeworthy. The other one, which has just been totally overlooked, and it speaks to how dreadful some of his man management has been, is when he said that Christian Doidge didn't want to leave because he had a nice girl in Dundee or something, or he had met a nice girl in Scotland, and he didn't want to leave Dundee. I mean, like that is just chronic man management, saying that to the media. Never once talked about the good qualities of players who are just, I mean, talk about chucking someone under the bus. Didn't rate him, but he's met a nice girl in Dundee, so we'll keep him around.
So yeah, guys,
I think that's one of the things is his man management skills were clearly really poor. I think Harry McCurdy said he hadn't heard from him in a while when he had his heart problem, which I'm not really surprised about. Lee Johnson loves himself and it's all about him and the world evolves around him. So I'm not really surprised that he's not reached out. And same with Dan McKayler, who was on loan last year. Didn't really speak to him. So I just find him. He's just so egotistical. It's unbelievable. It's all about him and protecting his ego. Doesn't care about anyone else. So
yeah. And then if we look at this way that Lee Johnson has left the club in, we are not still in Europe, but we've got another European game to play against Aston Villa, so we're going to be at that competition. In terms of the League Cup, for the first time he has got us through to the quarterfinals. We're going to be playing against St Mirren. Obviously, Scottish Cup doesn't kick off for us until January, and in the league we start with 0 points out of 9 after 3 games. 2 of them definitely very winnable. So what start of the season? I would say the Livingston and what you got St Mirren game should have been very winnable.
All 3 are very winnable.
Yeah.
Motherwell, come on, like
I would say that's winnable. I would say very winnable.
I would say more often than not we should be beating Motherwell away from home, just
based on the budget.
Yeah, based on the budgets of the 2 clubs, I think that's a game that we should be winning more than 50% of the time. Yeah, just my view.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I always like being put in my place anyway. But essentially, my question was, we obviously gave our pre-season predictions earlier this month, or maybe just the end of last month. Is it still the same? Obviously, it's quite a difficult start. Whoever's coming in, then next game's Aberdeen away, probably not looking at getting points, and then after that, you're away to Kilmarnock, another tough place to play. what do you guys have you guys reassessed on where you think Hibs should finish this year, or is it now top 5 instead of top 3, or is top 3 still the goal?
Still a goal for me. Don't see why not. You're only 3 games in. It's not a catastrophe yet. Yeah, I still think top 3. Third place is still achievable.
Aberdeen sacked Goodwin in January and still managed to achieve third place. So we could probably burn through 2 managers between now and the end of the season and still finish third. If last season's in, we'll go back. Hire someone now, figure out he's no good, then sack him in January, get another guy, and then get third.
And then Ryan, obviously we're in the cup. That'd be a nice way to introduce yourself to the club, getting us a cup in the first 6 months of your tenure.
Absolutely, that's what we want to see as Hibs fans. I do think that the remit for this season's very achievable. It just means that we've got kind of less what's the word I'm looking for? The other teams are going to drop points, so we need to be more consistent and have more good spells than bad spells if we still want to achieve what we've set out to do this season.
And then obviously we've now got Greg and Liam on the pod, so we'll probably lean on you two to lead for the next bit. But me and Ryan kind of got through a few of our ideal candidates, but can you talk us through the type of manager that you want to come in, and then if you've got any managers in mind that you think would be good to fill that role? Liam, we'll go to you first. What type of manager that'll do better than Johnson would, and any names that come to mind?
I said this on Twitter already, so it's a bit of repetition, but the sort of mould I was originally sort of honing in on was someone who's perhaps already an established first team coach within a sort of elite or close to elite setup. Probably someone who counts man management as a strength for obvious reasons. I think someone who's got a really clear footballing sort of philosophy or identity that they want to use. And I don't say that because I necessarily need the style of play to be a certain way. I just think we need to have a real clear identity, because what we've lacked as a club over the last 15 months is identity, and identity in the way that we want to play. So I think those are the key things for me. In terms of names, a lot of the ones that you guys have covered I'd be interested in. Look, I'll be honest, I've done a lot of looking today. I'm not hugely inspired, and the name that I'm about to suggest doesn't fit the criteria that I've just talked about, maybe in terms of being a top coach in a setup, but I do like the name of Darren Moore. I'm speaking to a Sheffield Wednesday fan earlier and getting a wee bit more information about him, and just everything I hear about him I like. I was very impressed with the job he did initially at West Brom when he came in as sort of in a caretaker capacity after Alan Pardew. I think every club he's been at, he's done well. Maybe less well at Doncaster than the other two. And he's a free agent, which I think is important. I think there's financial constraints on the club at the moment in terms of, I don't know whether or not compensation will be a goer for some of the candidates that we're looking for. So those are the kind of names that I'm thinking about. You got any further suggestions, Greg? And what sort of candidate are you looking for?
Yeah, so I think I'm maybe a little bit more varied than you, Liam. I think I'm okay with a coach who's been established. Someone like Scott Parker. I did like his style at Fulham. Thought he was very good. Quite harshly sacked, to be honest. Didn't work out for him in Belgium for whatever reason. Another name, Didier Digar, took the Nice caretaker job. 20 odd games, 48% win ratio, which is impressive. Started off with a 6-1 home win against Montpellier, which I'm not going to complain if you're beating teams 6-1. So, and also Darren Moore, definitely a name that I like. Was impressed with Sheffield Wednesday last year. He seems to talk very well in the media as well. He doesn't just hit it with buzzwords. So definitely those three would be the preference. Whether they're all affordable or not is a different story. But I think we need to speculate to accumulate. But obviously, you don't want to go too far into that.
No, fair enough. Ryan, what do you think about what you've just said?
Yeah, like Greg, I quite like Didier Digar. Heard a lot of good things about him as a young coach. I think similar to Will Still, the manager at Reims, they were having to pay for every game that he was there as manager. So it says a lot about his qualities. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, Darren Moore, another guy with a good track record. He was a defender by trade, a big hard defender, and I think he would get to work straight away on our frailties there, which would be a start. But other than that, there's no real standout name for me that's been touted. The list to me, the bookies list that came out there with, I think there was about 10 managers on it, but all fairly underwhelming in terms of something that we can all get behind. I think certain people have their preference, but I'm not sure if everybody's going to be happy by the next appointment.
Nah, fair enough. I think that's kind of where we're at, isn't it? Like, I think the club will want to try and appoint someone who's immediately going to get fans on side, but I think ultimately there's going to be some division in terms of what people want and how people prioritise things. I think that, the age-old debate about style of play has obviously reared its head over the last 24 hours. A lot of people are of the view that style of play is very important. Some people are of the view that it's pretty inconsequential and actually results is the most important. And people probably have a preconceived idea about different managers delivering different styles of play. What I would say to that is I think good managers generally get the best out of the players that they've got and play to a style a lot of the time that just suits those players. And if you've not got a transfer window to bring your own players in, because this manager's not going to have a transfer window, they're going to have the best part of 4 months just to roll with and play the players that they've got. They're going to have to be flexible and work within a style, and actually maybe not be too rigid and fixated on playing a certain way. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that we get someone in who can demonstrate that flexibility, because I don't think we saw that from Maloney in his short stint. I don't think we really saw it from Lee Johnson. I'd argue with Jack Ross, our style did change at times. I know people maybe were still very critical of the way we played, but I think it did change at times. Any other names that anyone wants to throw in before we move on to talk about something else?
Seen Nick Montgomery kicking about today. One that I'm really not sure of. Don't really know an awful lot about him, so wouldn't like to chime in and comment on that. But I just want not just how the buzzwords every week and say what people want to hear or whatever. I want a manager that's honest, first of all, and is honest in his assessment of the players' performances week in, week out, and is also honest in his own assessment of his qualities and his credentials. Because I'm sick of hearing Lee Johnson going on about how it's this and that and all the factors, and so it just seemed like I got it wrong today, which I think if managers do acceptably, it puts a lot of credit in the bank with them. I think fans are looking for that responsibility.
No,
yeah, just got a couple of things there about Nick Montgomery actually, since G brought it up. He's 41 years old. He's only managed 59 games, so he's in the kind of rookie category as such. It's not an awful lot of games, and in those 59 games, he's got a 49% win ratio, so it's not bad. Obviously, he's won the league last year in Australia, but we have to consider the quality of that league. We know what comes in and what comes from that league and what goes into it in terms of player ID. It's not the greatest in quality. However, it's obviously bought him a bit of credit across Europe because he's been touted for a couple of jobs. The other thing I want to mention is I see a lot of people saying we need to get a young, up-and-coming manager. So I'm just going to give you the ages of the last 4 managers when they were appointed. And to me, this is young. Heckingbottom was 42. Jack Ross was 43. Maloney was 38. And Lee Johnson was 41. So to me, that's all fairly young. In terms of managerial appointments, I think Lee Johnson's the one that stood out because of the amount of games he's taken charge of. Jack Ross had relative experience, but the other two not so much. I'm not sure what way I want to go with that. Me personally, I'm interested in somebody like Stephen Robinson. I've come to terms with the fact that I'm not all about style of play. I want to leave the stadium having known we've won a game, as opposed to seeing a couple of spells with nice passes. I'm at the point in my life now where Hibs are just, for me, it's about winning games more than anything else.
I would be very, very underwhelmed by Stephen Robinson if I'm being completely honest, and I totally understand the reasons for people mention him and him being brought up as a name, but he did, I think, a reasonable job at Motherwell. He made the most of the young players that came through the system there, and I think he's done a good job at St Mirren. But I think expectations rightly will be raised significantly when it comes to Hibs. And I think if you looked at the jobs, albeit he was only for a short spell of time, that he did it older than Morecambe, he was very, very underwhelming in both of those jobs. And that, for me, is a little bit of a worry. Maybe he jumps to another club where the expectation rises a little bit and struggles. I think it's easy to be a manager of a sort of smaller club in this league and punch above your weight than it is to be manager of a bigger club and punch down the way sometimes. That sort of flat track bully sort of style of thing. And if you were to give me a choice between the two and it was McInnes or Robinson, I would take Derek McInnes every single day of the week and twice on a Sunday, because he's got experience of ultimately finding a way to beat teams in this league who are on lesser budgets.
Absolutely. That was the next person I was going to say a little bit about. But I think you've pretty much covered off what his strengths are. But Derek McInnes is the guy who's going to get you results ultimately. He's going to propel you up the league. He's proven to do that. He won the championship with Kilmarnock, having only been in the job 6 months, and they weren't top at the time. So you really had to kind of get a move on with that. He also got St Johnstone promoted. So he's had relative success where he's been. Aberdeen obviously were really successful when he was there, albeit Rangers weren't in the league, but they were the next best team, second to Celtic the majority of the time. Plenty of League Cup appearances, Scottish Cup appearances. So, yeah, Derek McInnes, if you don't care about style of play, he's your man. Like,
I just think that see if someone like McInnes does come in and you're maybe not getting the results, then I think the fans might turn quicker because he's got
that's
that
when it goes wrong.
But I think it would happen a lot quicker with him than anyone else.
And I'll be honest, I don't really want either of the two, but I'm just saying, with a gun held to my head, that's the one I would choose, because I think McInnes' play has probably got some flaws. I do think the McInnes style of football thing is a bit of an overused sort of trope that we talk about in Scotland. I think it is spoken about more than is valid. I don't think his Aberdeen teams played great football, but ultimately, it's very, very difficult to play fast flowing football and on a year-on-year basis when it's second or third every year with the budget that Aberdeen do. It's I'll be honest, I'm saying very difficult. I think it's nigh on impossible. And I do think the football thing's overused. The sort of style of football thing's overused. But let's see what happens, man. I think it's quite unlikely the club are going to pay compensation for someone when there's free options out there. I think McInnes and Robinson, quite rightly, Kilmarnock and St Mirren would demand money for both of those two leaving, because they are probably, both of those clubs, one of their biggest prized assets at the moment is their managers, because frankly they're probably overperforming where they should be in terms of the context of the league. And Stephen Robinson achieved top six at St Mirren, which is something Jim Goodwin tried and failed to do, and they were paid compensation from Aberdeen for him. So I can completely understand their point of view on it. Any other rogue shouts before we move on in terms of names? I've got a really rogue shout that is founded on nothing, but I just want to share it, because when I was coming up with names, trying to come up with a name to someone who works with an elite setup, right? So anyone who's spoken to me about English football knows how much, not just English football, just football in general. I've followed Roberto De Zerbi's career for quite a few years. Just the style of football that his teams play is just, it's up there in terms of some of the best football that you'll see. I would love us to go after someone within his sort of setup and with a similar philosophy to his. So everything that Ryan said about fucking doesn't bother about branded football, just out the window and go and get some within the Brighton setup. Quite who, I don't know, but they are a club who are just incredibly well run. I know there'll be lots of people whose eyes will be rolling at that because sounding a bit like an EPL fanboy, but I do think you have to look at where the best practice exists, and Brighton are possibly one of the best run clubs in the world at the moment in terms of not just their recruitment strategy, but actually the product on the pitch as well.
I think in terms of that, I can't remember who he worked under, but the boy that managed at Kelly, can't remember his name.
Oh, Angelo Alessio.
Yeah.
Did he work for Conte?
I think so, yeah. It was either Conte or Allegri, but that ended really, really, really badly. And that was, fair play to them for taking a chance, but that was really bad, and that gives me the fear about maybe taking someone like that and trying to put him in a managerial position. But Yeah.
One that's a bit roguish, and he was in at Reading not that long ago, so I don't know if he's got a link with Brian McDermott, but big strapping centre half, Yap Stam. I know he's not had great success as a manager, but I would be shit scared of that guy. And I think that's what this current crop of players might need from time to time.
He did really well. I think it was his first season at Reading. He did really well, and then he just fell off a cliff. Maybe his second season, and he hasn't done a good job. I don't think anywhere else he's been. But I totally hear you in terms of like caliber and pedigree, and someone that people could respect. He's also over 6 foot tall, which I think is a really important criteria for the next manager coming in.
So I think I think he might have done his coaching badges or his early coaching round about the Ajax setup, which is like an absolute institution for football in general, especially around Europe. So I think having come through that kind of academy, if you will, would stand anybody in good stead in terms of coaching.
I think he may have, but I think his allegiances, if I'm not mistaken, I think his allegiances lie with the other team in Holland, who don't particularly like Ajax very much. No, the other one.
Feyenoord.
So, but he may well have been.
I just remember him playing there in the late years of his kind of twilight years of his career. But yeah, pedigree's there, absolute warrior. Never going to happen, but nice to talk about it.
Just a really quick one, just while we round up on this chat on Angelo Alessio you were talking about earlier. His time at Kilmarnock was really well summed up in an interview with Kirk Broadfoot, where he talked about them having to spend hours working on shape ahead of a game. And Kirk Broadfoot was like, I don't want to work on shape, I just want to do rondos in that.
That's the thing.
Scottish football for you.
It sums up why Heckingbottom wasn't a success, really, because I think he was too technical for the league, and just doing rondos isn't going to make you a football player. But then Kirk Broadfoot did just about burn his face off with an egg in a microwave. So is he really to be trusted on the characteristics and the qualities of managers? Probably not.
Right, fuck me. We've kicked arse at this manager chat.
As long as it's not Kevin Thompson, wouldn't be back.
Right. Here's a quick question. Right. Here's a quick question, and not to turn this into a negative, but who is the one name that you've heard so far that you are like absolutely fucking not?
Malky Mackay.
How long have you got? Because Steve Evans is right up there, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Even if he turns up in his beach gear.
Steve Evans' teams not play quite good football. Is that not like a? I think he's not. You think he looks like a Brexit manager, but he's not a Brexit manager.
Yeah, I don't think he's a Brexit manager, but you have to wonder how Steve Evans would cope with Scottish football. I just don't think he's definitely suited to the lower leagues in England, and that's probably his ceiling.
He has a bit of a character,
Yeah, which I think the fans would probably quite get on board with, but yeah, Scott Brown as well, Marvin Bartley.
Too soon
for
both of them. Rhys McCabe, too soon for Rhys McCabe. Rhys McCabe is one you'd definitely be keeping an eye on.
Yeah,
Marvin Bartley, probably because his Hibs connections you'd keep an eye on, but in terms of giving them the job now, not a chance.
Yeah, no chance. And Malky Mackay goes without saying.
Malky Mackay's top of my list for a big, massive no. I don't want the football club to be connected to a racist, a misogynist, a homophobic. Like, I'm against all that stuff. So not for me. He's a homophobic piece of shit.
A homophobic.
Someone's going to clip.
I don't like homophobia.
Someone's going to clip the bit of you, Ryan, saying Malky Mackay's top of the list and just stop it there.
No, what have I done? No, see the likes of this wouldn't happen because they've got good enough jobs as it is. But if somebody young like Marvin Bartley was to come in and assist somebody, won't happen because he's got a number one job somewhere. But that's when it would be okay, fair enough. But they kind of lead up the big job themselves. It's a big ask at the minute.
I was really impressed with Ipswich actually, and they took a huge risk on Kieran McKenna, and wow, he absolutely blew it out of the water last season. Same with Michael Carrick, thought he was really good.
Yeah.
Playing a more advanced role at Manchester United before taking the Middlesbrough job. Not had a great start to the season, but someone like a Kieran McKenna definitely who's worked at an elite club. would be ideal. But don't forget, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was very impressed with the facilities at Easter Road. So,
and those are the two names that were on the top of my head when you said about the coaching, the young coaches. Kieran McKenna is like a coach through and through, first and foremost. That's pretty much what he's devoted, is because he had a pretty insignificant playing career. Michael Carrick's a bit different in that he also had a very successful playing career, let's be honest. And graduated into coaching maybe in a more sort of gradual sort of way, but it's done very well up until this point anyway at Middlesbrough. Those are clearly guys in the mould. You see success at other clubs and look and think, why could we not go and get someone like, why could we not go and identify someone like that? I think the thing that comes at it is a huge risk, because there are facets of that thing that are very hard to measure. Like man management is a very hard thing to measure whether someone's good at or not. I mean, I think with Lee Johnson, you could tell quite early on that man management perhaps was not his strength, just based on some of the things that he said about players quite early on, and then continued to play them, which was, classic kind of Terry Butcher method of I'm going to roast you in the papers and then still have to play you. So I don't know. Anyway, Harry, get us back on track, man, because we've just been fucking laughing at random names.
Can I just make one more point? I'll make one more point about Swansea City. They obviously had Graham Potter, Steve Cooper, and then Russell Martin. 3 young coaches who have gone on to do pretty decent things. So it does work. You just need to find the right characters with the right credentials to come in and complement the squad and make a difference.
Can I just ask something? Do we need any more than a head coach kind of figure? Do we need a manager now that we have a director of football in place? Do they need to be as hands-on as maybe what previous managers have been, or is it on the grass every day, training what you've got, developing the talent that you've got, and we will recruit the players for you? Like, similar to what John Dal Tomlinson wanted to be in place before he would come to the club.
We believe.
Well, so we're told.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think that the director of football has obviously got his own role. Head coach, absolutely fine. Just the trainer, ultimately. Manager signs off on signings, but I don't think there needs to be a whole lot of crossover there.
At the end of the day, like, football clubs are a massive operation, and it makes sense to have a separate recruitment department that obviously the manager should be able to feed into and say what targets they want. But if the manager we last had couldn't put centre backs at centre back, so maybe we should just focus on getting someone in that can put players in their correct positions first and foremost, and then if they want to help out with the transfers, that's magic. But Hibs, if you're listening, we clearly know our stuff in terms of who we should be recruiting for the next manager, so if you want us part of that conversation, do let us know. And then
I'll be burning Ian Gordon's lug in some club in Birmingham this week. I'll bring the notepad down and just list the names out.
See, another name that occurred to me when we were just talking. Sorry, Harry, again, I asked you to get us back on track and I'm taking us off route again. What about Stephen Mead? He was part of Steve Clarke's setup with Scotland. He's worked, I believe, at Nottingham Forest in various different roles and capacities. He's always come across really well to me in front of the media. He's someone, I think, in that sort of mould, like a kind of coach first and foremost, who can work under a director of football. He's someone I'd be interested in.
He's played at a very good level as well.
His stock as a coach is apparently really, really high. He's very highly rated. Everybody that's worked with him speaks very highly of him.
My main concern there, I like the name. Don't dislike it, but just for balance, how many first-time managers typically do well? I know you've got Robson at Aberdeen, but if you look at Hibs, we had Maloney as his first stint, didn't do very good for his first manager job. And then Cathro was his first stint. Stubbs I liked, but I know a lot of the fan base were quite against him as manager by the end of it.
I just don't like that comparison of just picking up other first-time manager names, because there's so many other attributes that you have to throw in and think about other than it just being their first managerial job. Because for every Maloney, there's a Mowbray. And I think you'd have to look at the body of work that he's done up until now. 42-year-old, the people that he's worked under, Steve Cooper, obviously at Forest, Chris Hughton as well, I believe, Steve Clarke. I mean, we're talking about some pretty good managers that he's worked under, as well as the level he's played at. Another thing I like about Stephen Mead, as a character, I would probably, as a player, I would describe him as someone of relatively limited ability, and I don't mean that in unfair terms, because a 10 times footballer I ever was, but he's someone who absolutely maximised every single bit he could get out of his body.
And he played international football too, based off the ability he had, as you say, maximising and working hard. So fair play to him. But it's a good example for a young player.
Aye. And then moving on from manager chat, because I believe we've given you that in abundance here. But coming up this week, we've got 2 games. Aston Villa. Let's not talk about what the result's going to be, because realistically, we're not going to be winning by 6 or more goals. But guys, we're pretty excited to be going down to Birmingham. I don't think many people from Scotland say that, but we're excited to be going down to Birmingham for a few days, and it's going to be quite a jolly, isn't it?
Yes.
I think so.
Maybe
a couple of shandies.
Just one or two. Keep it
excited to go to the stab capital of Europe. Can't wait, man.
Thank you, Ryan.
I think it's up there in terms of numbers.
Wonderful insight from Ryan.
What kind of stabbings we talking? Kitchen knives, machetes?
But the blunt butter ones, they hurt the most. So make sure you pack your Kevlar.
Jeez, okay. So down the stab podcast now. Yeah, I think there's a chocolate factory. So if you want to do some like touristy things in Birmingham, there's a Cadbury's factory down there, so you can get involved in that if you're not just there.
Does anyone tell you? He's maybe change his mind. There's a chocolate factory. I'll be on the first train down, man.
It's going to be class, so it's going to be class, isn't it? Like the game comes secondary. Like it's all about the trip.
And you know what it's like, guys. New manager buzz. You never know what happens with a caretaker manager buzz.
To be honest, it won't be as big a scalp, and I don't think they'll be the Aston players. They've got Liverpool at the weekend, so your French players, famous last words, won't be as big a scalp, and but it'll be 4-0 this time instead of 5.
What you've got about bringing players in out the dark is that they will be competing to start the next again game or the week after. Like guys like what's his name? Zaniolo.
Yeah.
Like they've just brought him in for 40 million. They'll probably start him. They've got guys, squad an abundance of quality, but hopefully they all have an off day.
Can I just say, did anyone see Matty Cash's second goal yesterday in the win against Burnley?
Wow.
They play some good football. And I never probably appreciate that Emery had done a good job at Aston Villa last season, but I think until you see them in the flesh, you get a real perspective on just how well coached a side they are, but also the quality of players they've got. Man, it's fucking scary. They'll bring guys in from the reserves that, quite frankly, would walk into our team. So
how unbelievable the passing. Like they must have kept the ball for a good 2, 3, 4 minutes without Burnley sniffing, and the intricate passing and it's mental. Like
was that the move where the centre half played a ball right into the striker's feet and then kind of recycled it again on the ground? That was lovely. Plus, it's their second keeper that's popping the ball, but they're both great with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
keeper's probably starting our midfield, to be honest.
They would absolutely scalp anyone in our league easy, including the Old Firm. They'd scalp them about the place, no problem.
100%.
And it wouldn't even be close.
In terms of actually caring about the result as opposed to just the away day, we are away to Aberdeen at the weekend. Aberdeen 100th minute equaliser against St Mirren away on the penalty spot. Have we got any hope going into that game? Is that just one of the ones, hopefully, nab a draw going into the international break and then can kind of reset going on, or do you want us to actually go up there and hopefully David Gray can inspire the boys to attack?
Start winning games.
Yeah, I don't want to just start picking up 1 point. You really need to start winning games of football, getting 3 points. Yeah, you can only hope that I can give them a bit of a workout on Thursday, albeit Aberdeen's penalty, like yes, they shouldn't have stood. Miovski's hit the ball twice as he scored the penalty, but yeah, I think like we need to win games of football. We need to forget about the first 3 games. We need to go into fresh ideas, which is tough for David Gray. He obviously can't really put too much of his stamp on the team, but the players there are good enough to go up there and win. They need to start taking responsibility as well.
Yeah, sometimes big decisions at clubs like that can galvanise a squad of players. David Gray might give different instructions and set the team up in a different way that will get the best out of some of the guys there. Having been in and around the club for a long time, you'll know certain players fairly well, like Martin Boyle, and maybe how to get him into the game and be more effective, how to shore up the back, because he's been part of setups that don't concede as many goals. So we can only hope that that's going to be the case. As I say, big changes at a club can galvanise the place.
We're missing Chris Cadden though. That's abundantly clear for the first few games this season.
It's like you don't miss it till it's gone, eh?
Yeah, you don't realise what you've got until it's injured.
I was with Liam though. I always rated him, eh?
Some of us know a right
easy.
back when we see one.
It's easy to cane these players, but you can see what he brings to the team and what we miss when he's not there. So,
aye,
it's just a shame Sean Mackey wasn't right-footed.
Sean Mackey, yeah.
But Liam, in terms of setup, obviously David Gray's only likely, from what we think should happen, is likely only going to have 2 games in charge. Is there a certain way you'd like to see us set up? I know you're not a big formation fan, but in terms of personnel, is there any players that haven't been starting that you maybe would want to see start?
I'd probably play a midfield 3 of Newell, Doyle, Hayes and Alan Del Ferrier. I'd be tempted, and I say tempted, I'd be tempted to look at the back line as well and make some changes there. Certainly wouldn't be playing Harbottle at right back. Might get him in at centre half. I think the goalie one's interesting as well, because don't know what happened to David Marshall, but looks like he could be potentially missing for a couple of games. So I think there's a decision there to make around whether it's Max Boric or Murray Johnson. Again, not privy to that. I think the goalkeeping coach will have the best idea of who's best placed to play there. And I would absolutely be playing Boyle, Yuan and Venta in both games. I think they need to develop an understanding together. Got an international break to benefit from. After the Aberdeen game, they'll get a rest during the international break. But I think they need to start the games, potentially look at maybe the options of Doidge and Lafondra off the bench, because I think Doidge and Lafondra have actually been decent this season, despite a bad start to the season. I think all 3 of the centre forwards have looked decent, which is an incredible thing to say when you've got 0 points in your bottom league. But I think also, I'm very conscious that we only really seem to have Boyle and Yuan that we're using in wide areas, unless we kind of play a beat higher up. So yeah, I do think those 3 need to play. They need to develop an understanding together. I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I would also be kind of hoping that there might be some movement in the transfer market in the next couple of days, for obvious reasons, going into the Aberdeen game. I think we're really Liam says we're a bit light in the wide areas forward on the pitch. He's absolutely right. But I also think we're kind of almost desperate now for a full back on the left-hand side. No slight on Stevenson, no slight on Obita. Obita's qualities lie elsewhere. But I think it's almost pivotal to the season that we do bring in a left back.
Need a fucking 6 as well, man. Need a 6, like.
Yeah, we do. If we're going to play Del Ferry, who's not truly developed yet as a player and got that experience, we do need a 6, because Levitt's injured himself, and he's not typically a number 6. He's a creative player with great feet, and he's a technician, so he's better off further up the park. I'm speaking to somebody yesterday.
Talking of 6, I find it quite funny that Jimmy Jeggle came out in the press today and said that we need to learn from our mistakes. He's made 2 mistakes in the last 2 games, and his attempt to stop that cross for Livingston's second is nothing short of pathetic. His attempt to try and stop Joe Newbley running down the line is even worse. So I think if he wants to go on about learning from mistakes, he needs to look at himself first and foremost, because he's not been good enough. And that's not just the last 2 games, that's been pretty much his full Hibs career, other than his first game. So yeah, if he wants to talk about learning from mistakes, then that's on him as well. But for me, Lee Johnson made the total wrong call at the weekend, bringing Del Ferry off. I think he's got a lot of good qualities in there. He actually played a lovely through ball for Ellie Yuan, created a great chance. So he's got that level of creativity as well. He's strong. And we need to get Jude Doyle back in there along with Joe Newell, because they two are our best midfielders in central areas fit at the moment by far.
From a selfish point of view, I'm desperate for Del Ferry to play another 3 games, just so we can clip that little bit of Ewan saying that he will not make 5 appearances. And
Riley Harbottle played for Mansfield at left centre half last season as well, so he's also more than capable, right-footed or not. He's played there. Was pretty successful actually at Mansfield as well. So let's start playing players in their proper positions.
What was everyone's take on him dropping Hanlon and Stevenson for Saturday? I know we've not really talked about it. Like, what was the thinking behind that? Was it rest, or was he doing that to prove a point?
Nah, it's desperate. I think it's desperate. There's no. I just think he's totally lost the place. He'll beat us not a left back. I'd rather have Lewis Stevenson in there as a proper natural left back. Hanlon would add balance, but again, Harbottle can play there. I just think he's absolutely hanging people out to dry again, and he's done this before. So,
it was maybe. Sorry, Greg.
No, I just wasn't impressed with it. I don't think anyone could really understand what the team was. I think we were discussing it before the game, and you're coming up with three different formations, trying to fit everyone in, and nobody's really got a clue. So, yeah, I think that team selection almost was the final nail in the coffin for me, because that team was not good enough to go out there and win in the system. And also substitutions, actually, just chucking boys on with no structure. Also didn't help matters. So, yeah, but it's not great, because these boys obviously will be hurting by a knock in confidence, especially Harbottle playing out of position. So it's difficult, and I've never understood why managers play players out of position like that. Totally different kettle of fish playing centre half to full back. Totally different. You can't deploy the same abilities at all.
I think on go round. You were.
I was going to say, I wonder if by playing Harbottle at right back, he was doing that kind of really petulant thing that some managers tend to do in a kind of an appeal to the board, or be so that they can shift the blame post game and say, well, I don't have enough players in these positions. But he's totally left that kid out to dry. Like, he must feel terrible after that, because it was a really, really poor performance. But playing out of position like that, it's hard. It's hard going.
I'd probably drop Will-Fish as well, though. For Harbottle, I'd play Harbottle at centre half and drop Will-Fish.
Fish has been poor. Fish has been really poor. He keeps getting caught in position.
I mean, the defensive awareness is not there at all. I mean, that third goal, he's looking over his shoulder. It's rule number 1, don't look over your shoulder. Rule number 2, don't let it bounce. And he's done both, so it needs to be so much better.
Just on the Hanlon Stevenson, I think it's a very valid thing. After Luzerne, I remember mentioning to Bex and Craig, I thought Hanlon was great tonight. I thought maybe could have done better for, I think, one of the set piece goals, but I thought on the whole, I thought he had another really good game. I think he's been good this season. Some guy randomly turned around to me and said, "You're part of the problem." And I was like, we've just won away from home. Well, we've drawn away from home to win a tie in Europe, and you're saying I'm part of the problem for being happy with a player's performance. I think it was ridiculous that Paul Hanlon was dropped, but I think it's more ridiculous we've not got a left-sided centre-back. Like, I know Greg's just said Harbottle can play there, but we've not had a left-sided centre-back signed since Fontaine, if I'm not mistaken. And it's depth that we've been asking for years. I know it's hard, few and far between good left-sided centre-backs, but we do need one. And then Stevenson, I said at the start of the season, I wasn't comfortable coming into the season with Stevenson being a 38 game a season left back, and I'm still not. I do think that he can come in from time to time and do a good job. I think he'll consistently do that until he decides to hang up the boots. But for me, left back needs to be priority. I love Stevenson, and I'm more than happy to see him play games for Hibs, but I'm not happy to see him play Thursday, Sunday. I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, Liam, you asked a question. What's your thoughts on it?
Nah, just I was interested in everybody's takes. Obviously, it was a wee bit of a surprise. I think everyone was surprised when they saw the team come out, and I do think on the Stevenson thing, I think we all were all under the impression when we signed Obita he was going to be played at left back. He played there on Saturday. I think there has to be huge question marks over whether or not he is a left back in this league or not. Particularly given that he's not really been fancied there. He's been played further forward typically when he has come into the team. And we did, we made the decision not to take Oscar McIntyre on the pre-season training camp. He's now gone on loan to Queen of the South. And coincidentally, I think it was very, very good for Queen of the South the weekend in their win. So really positive to see him get off to a good start. Still got high hopes that he could maybe be one that could help sort of break that Lewis Stevenson dominance at left back. But otherwise, I think we probably need to be in the market for a left back and a right back, or someone that can play both, and a number 6 before the window closes on Thursday, which is going to be interesting.
So Dennis Irwin and Nicky Butt.
Nicky Butt. I'm going to be honest, Nicky Butt is not a Man United player who I really, really appreciate. I all.
Really, he
from-
was a bit
from
of a
them years.
destroyer, no? Midfield
A
destroyer.
wee bit, but do you know what? I would
Yeah.
take probably Phil Neville at Everton before I'd take Nicky Butt at Man United.
Yeah, he was solid. He played about 3 or 4 different positions at Everton. Eh?
Nah, but he was best in the six.
He was great in the six. He was great in the six. Loved a meaty
Since-
tackle as well.
Since
Sorry.
we've been doing random tangents tonight, one story my dad always likes to tell me is what you got? Pelé was asked for his opinion on a World Cup preview at one point, and he was like, "Is there any players this tournament that you're watching out for?" And Pelé said, "I like butt." The most daft story I've ever been told in my life. Don't know if it's true, but that always tells me it anyway.
Pretty sure Maradona said the same in a different context.
Goodness. But guys, it has been we've covered off the Aston Villa and Livy games. We've talked about Lee Johnson moving on and who we want to replace him. You've got a whole host of options there, so do listen to it back and let us know which one of the guys mentioned you think would suit best. And we've talked about a couple of games this week that could be pretty exciting. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for the support as always. We always appreciate it. And we will be back next week. We'll go live next week. Don't worry, guys. We just thought live back to back might be a bit much. So we'll catch you soon. Thanks so much for listening.
See you.
Take care.